My own squadron, 8 aircraft were hit by bullets. In the beginning, we didn't know what was happening because we've seen movies and so on. When we see aircraft flying in the Second World War, and you find black splashes all around the cockpit, and this was actually happening to us. We didn't even know till realize afterwards that they were all firing at us. And as each time they fired nearer and the bullet got nearer us, the whole aircraft shook a little bit.
And he decides to go overt. And he takes his little gunboat flotilla led by the INS Panvel. He embarks on the INS Panvel. And he's followed by the 2 Bangladesh Navy ships, the Palash and the Padma. And the 3 of them go upriver, right up the Khulna River, like literally to the heart of East Pakistan. They navigate through all of these narrow waterways and channels, and they finally get there. They launch a gunboat raid.
Gigi sir and Sandeep, welcome to the... I'll begin with you, sir.
This game is about the
Navy's contributions, and I think the 1971 war stands as the Navy's finest hour. Even so, public attention is on the spectacular Karachi attacks. For a long time, we didn't know what happened in the East till your book came out. So, not only did you begin
on this very same 4th.
In fact, the morning of the 4th, launching your attacks from Vikrant. But can you give us a very, very brief background as to how all that came together? Because just about 6 months before that, the aircraft carrier was hardly ready. So you mobilized them, you got them ready, and you attacked. Very quickly, how did that happen?
Vikrant was a limping ship and been laid off into the docks for over a year. And the squadrons were disembarked, and we were given no priority after that because it was recognized by everyone that Vikrant would never sail again. She had a very major defect, and she was going to take at least 3 or 4 more years to get operational, if at all. If the Navy was able to spend that much money in getting a new boiler and ordering it from overseas and fitting it right down below the deck. Accordingly, the squadrons were disembarked, the 2 squadrons, and then they lost their importance. They took on a training role. They were denuded of the experienced pilots. They were denuded also of aircraft as the aircraft began to drop out for lack of spares. The start of in July, August of 71, when Bangladesh was in the offing and East Pakistan and was creating a lot of problem. So Vikrant was sailed out after 3 or 4 weeks of sea trials, after laying off for over a year, as I mentioned. And all I knew was, when I was commanding the squadron in Goa, that I was ordered to bring 6 aircraft to Madras, then Madras, Chennai, and operate and humor Vikrant at sea, because Vikrant is without aircraft. She had a new crew, totally new crew, and they never had operated aeroplanes before. And so it was an absolute new ship, new crew, and I myself had only I had about 2 or 3 experienced pilots. Mike Bada is sitting there. He was one of them. And others were all new pilots, 18 or 20 of them, who had never been on deck before and just qualified with their wings and were really were too new. So that was the situation when Vikrant sailed out, and I was told to bring as many aircraft as possible, up to 6, and I only managed to get 3 aircraft because there was no aircraft available. So that was the start. And then to cut the story short, we had 25 flying days in total, unplanned and without diversion in airfield, quite often. 25 days we had to prepare for war. In that period, we were 15 pilots, all experienced guys who had been with me before. Got from 3 aircraft, we were 18 aircraft. You can imagine how much importance was given to the Navy and the aviation at that stage when foreign exchange was generated almost overnight and the spares began to arrive. So that was the state in which in 5 months we were practically living on 3 and 4 aircraft. and just 25 flying days. You can imagine the aviators who are present here would know 25 days is nothing. But because my pilots had operated as a team before, and because they've all experienced deck pilots, so it didn't take them long to get back. But equally, the hard work was on the ship side, because from not operating any aircraft, they actually began to get very operational. And it was a very good team that was set up by, and I think the commanding officer, Vikrant, would get a lot of, because he was a very good commanding officer. And I mean, I've seen so many commanding officers of Vikrant. He was the non-aviator, and he was among the best. So we worked as a team, and we had a lot of problems. Radars would not work in the carrier. We had no aids in Seahawk aircraft apart from your watch and your speed. And so and then we had problems with the lifts. When the lift would not operate, no aircraft could land or take off. And similarly, we had problems all along the way, but we were just lucky. At one time, we were all ordered to ditch 8 aircraft, but fortunately, just the last moment, we managed to get the lift up. So this was the sort of state in which Vikrant was operating, limping all the way through just 14 knots. Gentlemen, the speed required of the carrier was 25 knots. That is the design speed, and that is because the Seahawks were operating the jet aircraft, and they required minimum 24.5 knots to get airborne with full weapon load and full fuel. So that was the state, and so we learned to make compromises everywhere. We either flew with less fuel or we flew with less armament, but we carried out the work. And on the 4th, we launched 8 aircraft to strike Cox's Bazar, and another 4 aircraft were airborne to give air defense in case there were enemy aircraft coming to attack Vikrant.
Sir, I'll just, because we've come to 4th December, wonderful way in which you're built up over 6 months from being nearly out of action now to getting ready for war. Sandeep, at the same time, in the same part of the world, there is parallel action. There's preparations for this overt action going from April, May onwards by navies, by the King Emperor, by the King Cobra, by the Emperor, by Sammy and everyone else, without the other part of the Navy knowing, for one of the most significant covert actions. This audience needs to know why Operation X was so significant.
Vikrant, thanks for having me here. It's a great honor to be here and to share the stage with you and of course, Admiral Gupta. So Operation X is something that the Indian Navy, the Directorate of Naval Intelligence came up with in April of 1971, where it begins with 8 Pakistani submariners who defect to India. They come across, they want to fight in they're very upset with what's going on in East Pakistan, and they want to fight the Pakistani military that's occupying them. And these 8 submariners become the nucleus of a very unique organization called Naval Commando Operations X. And it's a very small outfit. It's within naval intelligence itself. There's a small little setup called Naval Commando Operations X, which is set up for this covert operation. And it's so secret that my father's here, by the way. He was part of DNI during the war, 1971. So when Admiral Roy wrote that book in 1996, War in the Indian Ocean, I read the chapter on the Mukti Bahini frogmen. And I asked Dad, I said, Dad, did you know anything about this Mukti Bahini frogmen? Dad said, you know, I still remember we woke up one day somewhere in 1971 and we found that all the Bengali-speaking naval officers had vanished. No one knew where they went. And you know, there's this friend of mine, Commander Kapil, you give him a call. I heard he was jumping around with all these muktis. So, I mean, that is the beginning of that story. And so to answer the question, that this Navy, it created this small little outfit, starting with these 8 Pakistani submariners. And that organization grew to 540 naval commandos. And the interesting thing is, Srikanth, that despite the fact that India did not have a special forces unit like the Marine Commandos that they have today. That was in fact set up after the war. It was a recommendation after 71. They went on to train 540 of these Mukti Bahini naval commandos. These Mukti Bahini naval commandos carried out some of India's largest special forces operations in August. That's 4 months before the war began. On one night, they attacked 4 ports inside East Pakistan, sinking, disabling, destroying something like 22 ships, merchant ships. And this is an operation that is almost unimaginable because it was set up with such a small group of officers and men. You had 10 diving instructors from the diving school in Cochin. You, of course, had my co-author, Captain Samant. He was the man on the ground in Fort William, Kolkata. You had the Director Naval Intelligence, Admiral Mickey Roy. And, of course, the Emperor Charles.
Emperor Charles.
Admiral Nanda. He never drove a Lambretta scooter, I can tell you that. But I think he's the most remarkable Navy chief, and it's a sad thing that we've never acknowledged his contribution to the war in 1971. Had it been anyone else, we would not have seen the modern Indian Navy. This little covert outfit carried out operations for 4 or 5 months. If you've read this book, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which became a movie recently about a year back, Operation X was our Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. They were doing all kinds of things. They were converting harbor craft into mine layers. They were attacking ships inside East Pakistan. They were launching combat swimmers, hundreds of them. Literally, one of those operations under X was called Cloudburst, which meant that they were raining commandos into East Pakistan to attack merchant shipping. And this is an operation that nobody in the country knows about except for the Prime Minister, the Navy Chief, and maybe the Chief of the RNAW. It's a very, very small, need-to-know basis thing. So, which is why never underestimate the Indian Navy. They are like submarines. You will just see a periscope sticking out of the water, but under the water, there is this huge, gigantic submarine that's, kicking and it's churning and it's planning, it's plotting. That is Operation X. And coincidentally, it was the person on the ground, Commander Samant. Then Commander Samant was a submariner. He was the commissioning CO of the INS Vikrant. So
yes.
The last batch of Royal Navy commissioned Indian Navy officers, the first batch of Indian submariners, he plotted this thing. And before the war began, Operation Hex had sunk or disabled 100,000 tons of shipping inside East Pakistan. This was economic warfare on a kind that India has never
done. So, sir, we'll do this shifting actions. That was a Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. You are a part of gentlemanly warfare. They couldn't have chosen a better gentleman than you to launch the first attack, And there you go, very nice person, and take off on the morning of 4th with the rest of your gang and start plummeting East Pakistan and all their ports.
I mentioned earlier that the aircraft had limitations because of the ship, and we could not exploit the aircraft fully, but we made up by numbers, and we made up by the fact that not a single aircraft fell off the next morning. We were 18 to start with the day and ended up the day with about 10 or 12, but by the overnight they worked on, and every morning we had 18 aircraft. So we had plenty of aircraft available and plenty of keen pilots to fly them. So there was never a problem. And I must say that because of the experience of the pilots, firing was very accurate. I had a complete feedback after the war was over. I was given a helicopter and an armed escort and I went to assess all the damages that we had occurred, and I found that our firing was extremely accurate, either the bombing, rocketing, or strafing. And despite the fact that in one particular case, I remember we had to attack in middle of Chittagong city, right on top of the hill. There was a big, massive building. It actually turned out to be railways headquarters. But just 100 yards from there was a hospital. And I saw that as a lead aircraft. And I just warned everyone that be careful. There's a hospital there. Bombs can fall short 100 yards or nothing. But so we made sure that if anything, went over it. But bombing was very, very accurate. And I must say that I was also told that a lot of Pakistani soldiers were housed in that, and they all escaped they all were waiting to escape from one of the ships, which of course did not happen. And I think the large number of them must have surrendered in the end. It was the easiest part of the whole 6 months really was the operational bit. Because we had the aircraft, we had the crew as a crew, and the ship was ready to go, and everything was going very well. And just we could do nothing wrong. It was amazing.
I think he speaks like a true pilot. The easiest part was the flying and attacking. The rest was difficult. But just a quick follow on, sir. You led the Seahawks, but the Alize also did a great job. So you can just talk a bit about Ravi Dheer and his squadron's contribution to.
Ravi Dheer was, Lieutenant Commander Dheer was commanding the Alize squadron. He's a coursemate of mine. He was. And he led the Alizes, and most of the time they were flying at night because Seahawks had no radar, no navigational aids at all. And Alizes were good at night flying. They had their own radar. They had a crew of 3. And by makeshift arrangements, they were even turned to bombers. So they did a fair amount of bombing over the airfield at night. Some got shot, some were hit. But they all returned to the ship, and some extensive repairs were carried out. And it's amazing that in one particular case, they had total electrical failure, and they had no aids to come back, and they were missing. So a relief aircraft was sent at night to find them, and they located them, and at the same time escorted them back. And total failure of, and I must say, when they checked the bullets, the 3 crew, bullets passed between the feet and the head of all 3 of them. And there were about 10 or 12 bullets. Not a single injury took place. And eventually that aircraft was also made operational after a week. So that was the Alize squadron, and they did a marvelous job. They were not particularly hindered by Vikrant's speed very much, because they could still take off with full weapon load. And because being slow aircraft, it was the jets that had this limitation.
So Sandeep, ultimately it's about people. I mean, we can talk, we can do operation. We're all fascinated by what happened. But as he said, it was about people on Vikrant, and it is about people in Operation X. And it's the most crazy cast of characters thrown together, who had all sorts of quirks about them. And you have described some of them in your book, The Operation X. Talk us a little bit about this set of people. I mean, each one of them unique in their own way, but how did they make Operation X possible?
Absolutely. It's always about people, Srikanth. It's, equipment is just one part of the story. You have an Indian Navy. Had it been anyone else who had been at the helm, the Navy chief would have said, well, I have missile boats, but they don't have the range to go to Karachi. I have an aircraft carrier, it's got a crack in its boiler. Special forces, forget about it. We don't have a special forces unit, we just have a couple of divers. What can the Navy do? We'll sit out of this war as well, which is what they did in 1965. But you had someone there who was very deeply offended and hurt by the Pakistan Navy's attack on Dwarka in 1965, 60 years ago. And he takes it upon himself, saying that the Indian Navy is not going to sit out of this war, the next war. And he prepares for that war in 1971. That's Admiral S.M. Nanda, the Big Mac guy.
The Big Mac guy.
The Emperor Charles.
Yeah.
And he pushes the Navy with whatever little resources it had. They convert divers into special forces, who then train commandos, naval commandos. They drag the missile boats they tow them literally to Karachi, and they let them loose so that they can come back, fire their missiles and come back. They patch up the boiler on the INS Vikrant, and they launch it for airstrikes that Admiral Gupta led into East Pakistan, later Bangladesh. So this was a team that refused to take no for an answer. They would overcome all kinds of technical challenges. Under him, reporting to him, was the Director Naval Intelligence, Captain M.N. Roy. And he's one of the most enigmatic people that I've ever known. And he was the Director Naval Intelligence, of course. And they said that he would never let his left hand know what his right hand was doing. He was like literally, I'm sure in the maternity ward when he was born, they would have said that Mubarak ho, Naval Intelligence Operative paida hua hai. I mean, the secret. He's like our Admiral Canaris. Uh-huh. And then you had Commander Sami Samant, again a very mysterious guy, and he's like really I mean, I had a problem cooperating with him on the book because he, simply wouldn't talk. So very strange cast of characters, but, guys who wanted to deliver results. And here I say that, a lot of how we would have reacted to, you would have gone out and put a press release even before the operation had begun, So they're people who are very high caliber, fantastic naval officers who planned really well and then delivered results. And they kept it all to themselves right till the very end. Admiral Nanda never spoke about this operation. Captain Roy hinted at it, and Commander...
He left breadcrumbs.
He left breadcrumbs for other authors to follow, like me. I'm deeply grateful to him. And Captain Samant waited for the last years of his life to actually put this book out. And I'm convinced that he would not have written this book if Admiral Nanda and Admiral Roy had been around, because they would be worried about being pulled up. So, again, down if you go down to the diving branch as well, you have Commander Kapil. You have some very extraordinary people, very focused, very motivated. They delivered results. They were not ones to say that, oh, I don't have this equipment, I don't have that, I can't do this, I can't do. Never took no for an answer. Delivered results, and look at the results that they delivered. One of the world's largest maritime covert warfare operations, that's Operation X, and of course the carrier operations, outstanding after the Second World War. The missile boat attacks of Karachi, the largest ship-to-ship missile attacks of all time. And this is a small service. The Cinderella service gets single-digit budgetary allocations and delivers these kind of results. And I don't think there has been such a comprehensive defeat of any navy post the 1945 Second World War as the Pakistan Navy had been defeated.
I'm glad you mentioned it. So, Gigi sir, exactly the same point. I have often felt that Operation X can be made into a great multi-starrer movie of lots of good men who would not take no for an answer. And that was exactly what was happening on Flat Top. You mentioned about Swaraj Prakash, a great guy. You and Ravi there together. Bhai Sahab Saxena as the XO, Bilu Chaudhary as the commandery, the younger Saxena as the navigator, Jacob, I think, was the direction. I mean, you had again a clutch of good people on the Flat Top who was making the impossible possible.
They were well above average. That's exactly how it worked, because the teamwork was fantastic. I spent 12 years in Vikrant in their various capacities, 7 different tenures. But I've never seen a more cohesive group of officers, senior officers, and especially heads of departments, and down the line it goes, as such a great team as this one. I've seen they've always been fighting. Heads of departments always fight each other. They want a little bit more, and so on. And somebody's got to give, somebody's got to take more. But this never happened.
You didn't fight at all?
No, not at all. I mean, everybody was prepared to give his bunk. Yeah. But what I want to tell you is that there were three days when the Seahawks could not fly. There was zero wind. The wind is added to your aircraft carrier speed to give you the requisite wind on deck. But 3 days we just couldn't fly, even with minimum load, because there was just no wind. As you went further up north towards the Bay of Bengal, the wind began to die down. So we had to sail out beyond 150 miles to really get the wind, required minimum wind. So that was, and very many anxious moments were there. My own squadron, 8 aircraft were hit by bullets. In the beginning, we didn't know what was happening because we've seen movies and so on. When we see aircraft flying in the Second World War, and you find black splashes all around the cockpit, and this was actually happening to us. We didn't even know till realize afterwards that they were all firing at us. And as each time they fired nearer and the bullet got nearer us, the whole aircraft shook a little bit. So 8 aircraft were hit from my squadron, but they've all repaired. They all came back. 2 of them came back with shattered windscreens. They could not see in front. So they were brought back in formation to land on the carrier. And this is never heard of before. It's just first time ever it happened.
So see, I think by now you would have realized how matter of fact he says, no, we got some bullet injuries and things like that. I mean, that's the great flyer in him. So Sandeep, now for the question that I have meant to ask you many times. Tell the audience, what role did a condom factory in Trivandrum have to play in 71 war? Was it Trivandrum or somewhere in Kerala?
Absolutely,
Trivandrum. What role did a condom factory in Trivandrum have to play in Operation X?
It's one of the most fascinating subplots, within Operation X. The fact is that they make this Jugaad limpet mine for our naval commandos who are trained by the diving branch of the Indian Navy. And they designed a soluble plug. Now, a soluble plug is something the size of this little bottle over here, which fits into the side of the mine. The diver goes and he puts it on the side of the ship. It's a explosive charge with about 3 kgs of high explosive. And when the soluble plug dissolves, the firing circuit is complete and the charge goes off. Boom. And there's a hole created in the side of the ship and the ship starts taking in water. That's a simple thing. Now, the thing is that for the diver to swim there to the ship, these are surface swimmers, they're combat swimmers, so they put the limpet mine on their chest. These Bengali boys, very, very brave, exceptionally brave Mukti Bahini combat swimmers who swam to the ship. But in the process, when they were doing that, they discovered that the soluble plug started melting in the water, which meant that by the time he got to the ship and he put it there, the plug would melt in about 30 minutes or so. By the time he got to the ship and he planted there, the diver's life was in danger because when the charge went off, he would be very close to it. So they said, we got to protect our boys. So they said, how do we do it? How do we prevent a soluble plug from, how do we waterproof it? And so someone came up with this bright idea, just put a condom around it. And so they started ordering these condoms. And Commander Samant was sitting in Fort William and he was very alarmed that this little camp in a place called Palashi, the actual battlefield of Plassey, where Clive defeated Siraj-ud-Dawla, it was just a pure accident that they chose Plassey. They were actually training these boys there on the fields of Plassey. Captain Samant wondered, why the hell are these guys in the camp asking for so many condoms? What the hell are they doing there? And so it turns that this factory in Trivandrum, which was actually part of our family planning program, which began in the 1950s, which was to set up to build to manufacture condoms, then started getting super large quantity orders for this. And these boxes were being transported to Kolkata, and somebody in the factory would have been wondering, what is the Indian Army doing with all of these? Why are we getting these? Are they preparing for war? Are they preparing for family planning? Or what are they doing? But that's the long answer.
I mean, in the life of many greats, the Mahavir Chakra, the Nausena Medal for rescuing an aircraft, one of the most dramatic parts of your life, and I must come a little to your personal aspect, is that there are people who get married in different ways. There's some who get married going in a barat on a ghoda. There's some who go in a limousine. But you're probably the rare man who flew down to your wedding in a fighter aircraft. The only man who went to the barati in a fighter. Please tell, how did that happen? And this is in the middle of the 65 operation.
People think the Vikrant didn't take part in 65 war. The Navy did not. Actually, Navy did take part in the first half of the 65 war. Second half, the Vikrant was in dry docks. So it was during this, I was going home by train from Cochin to Dehradun, where I hail from, and come back with the barat to Bangalore. On the 12th of May was the wedding. 4th May, I was held up by the military police and said, you have to go back to Cochin. I said, I've just left Cochin yesterday and I've just arrived here and I'm on my way up north. He said, no, this is your warrant to go back. Your leave is cancelled. Now, this was 4th of May, and 12th of May was the wedding. So, like me, there was a good friend of mine also getting married, and he was to get married in Bombay, late Tipnis. So he was to go to Bombay, and I was to come to Bangalore. Now I didn't know that the Fleet Admiral had accepted Tipnis's wedding reception. So Tippy told me that why don't you get married in Bangalore, in Bombay? Because the ship is bound to be in Bombay, the fleet commander has agreed to attend his wedding. So I sent a message through a helicopter, because we were not allowed to transmit anything. through helicopter or telegram to my father-in-law to say that consider getting married in Bombay and not Bangalore on the same date, because my father-in-law insisted that we will not change the date. That date will not change, and if he can't come, we will understand. But so I said, to make it happen, why don't we postpone? Why don't we schedule the wedding in Bombay? So he said, no, we will not move out of Bangalore because everybody is around here. And in any case, my parents and brothers and sisters already left Dehradun by train to come to Bangalore. So they could not be contacted either. So it so happened that because the Admiral had accepted Tippy's wedding in Bombay, now I thought that he's lucky, he'll be going, but I don't think I can get married. So no matter how many telegrams I sent to my folks in Bangalore, they just wouldn't change the date or the timings or the place of the venue. They said, every time they told me, we'll understand, if you can't come, we can understand. So I was not sure whether they're very keen on the wedding at all. So, well, on 11th May, there was a party held in the wardroom for the two of us, and we were literally had too much to drink. And that bar was kept open on Vikrant till 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night. So, and we were told that we will be given an aeroplane, and each one goes his way. I go to Bangalore and I get married and come back within 24 hours. So we did that. We were launched rather late, 2 hours late. Instead of getting launched at 6 in the morning, there was no wind. And I had to go on full tanks because Bangalore was over 400 miles. So we waited. And this is one instance where you can't put any spare pilot in the spare aircraft either. So, as Mike will tell you, that there's always a spare aircraft manned fully in case your aircraft gets unserviceable, you jump out and hop into the other one. So all that was done, but finally, out of sheer desperation, they reduced my fuel, and the ship got nearer to about 370 miles or so, and Tippy was about 300 miles. So we both got launched with less fuel. And we were told that you have to come back within 24 hours. Now, it turned out to be 20 hours, because by the time we left, it was 9 o'clock. And the Muhurtam was at 10 o'clock. So that means they didn't want to change the Muhurtam time also. So I landed up there, but before landing, I just tell them that I've come. I just buzzed over their house in Bangalore. And they were all there at the airport, because the airport was, that time, HAL airport, it only took 15 minutes to get there. So, and then as my luck would have it, it was Muharram or some festival, and HAL was closed, and I had to land in HAL. So anyway, they allowed me to land, but there was no facilities available to receive the aircraft. And my briefing, of course, always in the squadron has been that whenever you land somewhere, you have to fuel the aircraft first, otherwise the tanks collapse. Fuel the aircraft, you fold the wings, you push the aircraft into the hangar so that you are ready for a flight next day. So I had to do all this in the thick of summer, 12th of May, very hot, sweating profusely. And I'm not even sure my brother had turned up and all with my gear, because I wanted to get married in my flying overalls. They're also sweaty one. So finally, anyway, all turned up okay, excepting all the events had been cancelled, because they're not sure of coming. But the wedding took place. And next morning, very bleary-eyed, got up at 5 in the morning, and 7 o'clock airborne, and I met Tippy in the air. We both landed together, one after another on Vikrant at 7 o'clock. So that is the story, but it didn't end there. The Vikrant had interviewed us that night, and on the SRE, and wanted to know how the wedding went. I didn't feel as if I got married at all. I just said it looked like a picnic to me. And so that was it. Then, of course, the story goes that my wife kept following the ship everywhere. We didn't know the program. She was in Bombay one day, next day we were in Goa, the next day we were in Cochin, and she followed the ship everywhere in Dakota. Finally, I got leave after a month and a half of getting married.
Isn't that lovely? So Sandeep, before we go to the audience, very quickly, I want to bring a little connection back to Mumbai of Operation X. Operation X was followed by the Force Alpha, where four small ships went right up to Khulna, Chalna, Mongla and attacked. One of the ships there was called INS Panvel.
Who would have thought, named after a small little sleepy town on the mainland Maharashtra, which is, by the way, getting its own international airport now. So let's hear it for Panvel.
So let's hear it for Panvel. Please tell them the story of Panvel.
Panvel, war breaks out on the 4th of December and Commander Sammy Samant is not satisfied with carrying out the world's largest covert maritime warfare operation. And he decides to go overt. And he takes his little gunboat flotilla led by the INS Panvel. He embarks on the INS Panvel and he's followed by the two Bangladesh Navy ships, the Palash and the Padma. And the three of them go upriver, right up the Khulna River, like literally to the heart of East Pakistan. They navigate through all of these narrow waterways and channels and they finally get there. They launch a gunboat raid. It's very unfortunate that there's a blue on blue there where the Indian Air Force strafes them. They shoot up two of the Bangladesh craft, but the Panvel gets away and it maneuvers, it picks up the survivors and it comes back. And at one point, the INS Panvel has 3 Mahavir Chakras on board.
Yes.
That is Captain Samant, Commander Norona, Lieutenant Commander Norona, there's Chiman Singh, and there's something like 4 or 5 Veer Chakras. And this is a boat that is not even 100 tons.
Yeah.
It's a gunboat with two 40-60s and it's got a couple of mines and that's it. And extraordinary people. A small little gunboat carrying this very remarkable crew, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and carries out the Indian Navy's only gunboat raid till date.
This is a ship whose size is probably less, length is less than this.
A little longer than this room, perhaps.
And that has, I believe, pro rata wise, if you go by the 30 people that were there, probably the highest number of awards of 71.
Of all time, yes.
You know?
Possibly after the 47.
Shouldn't a city like Mumbai, which has Panvel here, be remembering INS Panvel and its glorious exploits? Sir, a quick word on the Enterprise. Would you like to?
Intelligence had been given to our fleet in the captain of the, and the response would have been just a good morning. But what really happened was that Enterprise, as we learned later, had entered the entered the Indian Ocean, but too late. The war finished in 13 days, and nobody expected that to have happened. Normally it would have taken another 10 days more. That's the normal thing. But it ended very fast. And I think everybody was surprised, and so were the Americans. But I hear later on that Nixon, Kissinger had bypassed the chief of naval operations and started taking action on their own, without taking the Navy into confidence, and therefore there was indecision to sail, not to sail, come back, go back, they carried on like that. So that's what I hear.
My surmise, this is only my surmise, of course, politically they took a bet that probably, like Sandeep said, we had our partners who would have come in. They took a bet probably that they would not come in too deep or they would not get too much involved. But I believe that one of the long-term impact of Enterprise blackmail was India deciding to develop the nuclear submarine to act as a deterrent in future against such blackmail. It would probably never be minuted that way, but that's my guess that in some ways the fillip to the nuclear submarine program came out of the blackmail that we faced in 71, because it was the same Prime Minister who subsequently flagged off that. But that's simply my view.
Every year till about 2 years ago, Bangladesh would invite the defense people who had taken part in the war, and we all went in batches. I went in the first batch in 2012, and we were treated like VIPs. President Hasina was president then, and we were paraded around as if we were really heroes. And I think this continued all the way through till about 2 years ago, that may have antagonized some sort of people.
Indian military, Srikanth, in Bangladesh, they performed 2 rescue operations. Yeah. They rescued the people of Bangladesh from the Pakistan army, and after the surrender, they rescued the Pakistan military from the Bangladesh people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have come to the very end of this session. Thank you, Navy and the nation. brilliant effort, 71 war, both overt and covert. We have one person who's actually part of that operation, another one who has seen it very closely and written about it for the first time. And I think this war in many ways was the Navy's finest hour. It gave us equities to be there on the high table with our two sister services, which is why you had Admiral Krishnan in that surrender photograph. And I think the Navy has not looked back after that, though subsequent part of that is what we'll be discussing in the next session with Admiral S.J. Singh. Thank you very much, audience, for being here. Thank you to our panelists.